You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box, where we're not afraid of anything. So ask away. We're here to tackle your tough questions. Today I have with me Brannon Patrick, who is, I'll give you a little bit of background about Brannon. He is CSAT trained. He is the co-owner of Therapy Utah, where I also work. He has a couple of podcasts that are wildly popular. The Therapy Brothers, as well as the
Brannon Patrick Show.
Brannon Patrick,
Yeah.
Thank you. Wildly popular. Forgot the name for a minute. He's a content creator, and he does the hiring and training of the therapists here at Therapy Utah. So thanks for joining us, Brannon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lindsay.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Today, what we really want to talk about is therapy. Therapy is a hot topic right now.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. When I was a kid, it was taboo. It's like, oh, you're going to therapy? And now it's like flipped on its head, where therapy is kind of cool,
right?
Which I love as a therapist. Yeah, therapy is cool.
Right. Good problem to have. In
Yeah.
fact, now it's like, if you don't have a therapist, what's wrong?
Yeah,
with
what's
you,
wrong
right?
with you? Yeah.
We're kind of change things around.
Yeah.
So, totally agree. So with that change in therapy and kind of the normalizing of therapy, we really want to talk about how therapy, like what makes therapy work?
Mhm.
Why does it work? We just kind of want to answer some questions around that and hope you could help us with that.
Absolutely.
Sound
I'm
good?
happy to.
Okay. So really, let's talk about this. Can therapy fix all the problems people say it can fix? What do you think?
It's that question. People, I think they come in with an expectation, and it can really get them in trouble, which is that my therapist is going to fix me. The reality is a really good therapist understands that we don't fix you. We guide you, we reflect things back to you, but ultimately a person's self-determination and motivation is the thing that will really make the difference. So, therapy isn't something where you pay the money, and it's not like a pill that you pop that makes you better. It's more like you're hiring a personal trainer where you still got to work out. You still got to get up in the morning and do the hard work. But if you have a good therapist who's going to guide you and who's going to reflect back and be honest with you and push you, then it can make all the difference.
Got it. So not all therapists are created equal. That's what you're saying.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So when you just said the work, tell me more, because I hear that all the time. Well, you got to be willing to work. You got to do the work. What do you mean by that?
That's a great question, because it's different according to what you're dealing with. So if a couple's coming in, there's work to do. If you're struggling with an addiction, there's work to do. But a lot of times what it comes down to is a willingness or an ability to get honest with yourself and to face reality. And then to choose what to do with that reality. So whether you're struggling with addiction, whether you're struggling with relationship problems, if you want to be in denial, if you want to blame, if you want to play the victim, you want to give your power away, then you can do that. And a good therapist will both love you for where you're at in that process and be okay that that's where you're at, but also help you see that you're holding yourself back and living in those places of stuckness.
Got it. So we're really hoping that the therapist can see things that we can't see in ourselves. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, yeah. And so the therapists are amazing. They're the best because they have to be so skilled where I can see things in you that you can't see in yourself. And then what I'm going to do is not just tell you what I see. I'm going to very skillfully help you come to a realization of those things, so that you can actually own it and see it and feel it. So then you actually can make the changes in your life.
Boy,
yeah,
that sounds like not easy to do. As you're saying that, I think that sounds like an art and a science.
Yeah.
Because I can't just tell you, well, Brannon, here's what you need to do. Fix it, figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get you to see that in yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
So like, I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm struggling in my relationship. and I come in and I just complain about my wife.
Mm.
Just complain, complain, complain. And you're seeing that as you're sitting there as a therapist, you're seeing like, oh my gosh, this guy never takes accountability. Like this guy's a bit of a narcissist. Okay. So as a therapist, it's really tricky because what that client might be doing is saying, please validate my victim, come side with me, come support me in this place. And so as a therapist, here's the art of it. You have to build rapport with the client, build a ton of trust, and then reflect back by reflective listening what's actually going on so that client can say, oh my gosh, I never take accountability. I'm a bit into myself here, and I'm not very compassionate toward my wife. So how do you get a person from this state of pride and victim to this place of ownership and accountability? It takes some skills.
And also, I think what's so important is while still feeling like the therapist cares about them.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
they're not there to just poke holes in this person's psyche and their ego, but to say,
And to shame them, tear them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really an important thing. And I would imagine that there's a lot of that takes time, and it also takes relationship building. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Okay. And the therapist, a good therapist will read that. Like, what do I need to build more relationship before I really go after something? How can I be effective with this client and meet them where they're at?
It's a good point. So I think another point with that is the pace is going to be different for every client and that a therapist sees. Would you agree with that?
Yep. Well, go ahead. If I could say the pace, but also what they get out of therapy. Some clients want something totally different than another. Like some clients want to just come in and have a friend that they can talk to. Like that's all they care about. And some want tools and a process and help me know exactly the next step. And so you'll get different things as to what they actually want. So
as a therapist, are you getting clarity on that? Are you saying, okay, what do you want out of this? Or is that just an intuitive thing that you're kind of gaining from your conversation?
Both. So I will ask them directly and have them tell me, but I'll also be reading it out myself, because sometimes they'll say, I want this, and then they'll be acting another way. And so I'll come back to them and say, you told me you wanted this thing, but you're acting as if you want that thing. Help me understand.
Got it.
And just illustrate that discrepancy so that they can get clear with, what do I actually want?
So one of the things that I think is important when you said that is people could feel really called out on that. Like, wait a minute, I don't know. I'm being really vulnerable. I'm sharing my heart with you. And now you're like calling me on the carpet, right? But one of the things you said that I think is important that I keep going back to is it's mental health. There's a quote, and it made me think of it when you said something earlier. Mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs.
Yeah.
And as you say that, I think, well, if what I'm saying to you, what I want, and then actually what I'm saying are two different things, then I have to be in reality, right? And sometimes being called about where I'm not living in reality can be tough, but maybe I've got to be willing to go there. Would you agree with that?
A good therapist will not collude with your denial. And your denial will try hard to get them to do that with you. Like, please validate that I'm right or I'm okay being here. And a good therapist, when you say call them out, they might feel called out. What's interesting, Lindsay, and you probably have this experience too, is if you're skilled as a therapist to do the art of therapy, your clients like it when you have the strength to call them out. You see what I'm saying? Yep. They're like, whoa, like you just said something or helped me see something that nobody else would have the guts to do. Like, thank you. And those are the best clients that are like, thank you. Yes. You're getting honest with me. You're getting real with me. You're pushing me. Because
we know oftentimes what's really going on, but we've had these protective layers to kind of protect us from actually what's really going on inside. So I would imagine when you maybe call out's the wrong word, but when you expose, illustrate, I like that, even better than expose, what's really going on, it rings true to them.
Yeah. And it, sometimes they push back and they get angry and they don't want to go to that reality. Sure. It's too scary.
Sure.
And then sometimes there's this feeling of relief of like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, That's what's going on. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Let's own it. Let's go there. And now what? Now we have an opportunity to decide what we do with this reality. So,
And so that would be the question is, okay, once we realize what it is, what do we do with it? So is that just individual? Because I know a lot of people say, okay, well, how long do I need therapy? How long is this going to take?
right.
How long are you going to take to fix me? Right.
Right.
So what is the answer to that?
Well, so that it's twofold. So a lot of times there will be a system or a process. So for example, if I'm treating addiction and I connect with a client and get real with the client and the client's like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for being honest." That doesn't take the addiction away. There's recovery capital that they need to build. There's systems, there's relapse prevention tools. There's all kinds of things that they still need. And so as long as they're honest and they own where they're at and their struggle, then we can start to install those things into their life that actually helps them get better. And so there's that, which a therapist can be really good at giving. We call it psych ed or just tools.
Sure.
Cognitive behavioral therapy type stuff. Or the other thing is, coming back to what I was kind of saying before, you get real with a person and then you meet them where they're at. So, like, for example, let's say I was working with a person who in their truth realized they needed to get divorced, but didn't want to do it right now. Like, it's too hard. There's too much other stuff in the way, blah, 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 all the reasons.
Sure. Then
I can sit with them in the struggle of it. I can be a support, but I can stay honest with them at the same time. And so as a therapist, I'm just providing some emotional support, some clarity, being a safe place they can bounce stuff off of as they make those difficult decisions.
Nice.
So therapists do both. They give the processes, but they also hold the space for right where the client's at.
So even though in this situation, like you said, you had somebody that ready for divorce, but wasn't quite ready for divorce, right?
Yes.
But as a therapist, and you're looking at that going, it's time for divorce.
Totally.
Like, what are we doing?
Totally.
But you're not saying that.
No, I can't recall ever saying that. So, like, to a client, I've never said that to a client.
Tell us why.
But the reason I'm kind of hesitating, and because I don't say it directly to a client, but I will reflect it back in every way I possibly can. And the client knows. The client deep down knows. And the reason why something like divorce, I do believe some things. Now, sometimes it's so obvious. Cases of abuse and things, I look at that and I'm like, come on, like get out of this situation. But a lot of times with divorce, the timing of it and how to go about it is between God and that client. They need to figure that out. What is their truth? But I can help them figure that out. Like, what do I need in place? What do I need to work on as I move towards something difficult here?
I like that. So it's less about, I'm going to tell you what to do. And it's more about, I'm going to help you come to the conclusion yourself.
Yep.
And have all the tools, the things in place that will help you make a decision that is right for you when it's right for you.
Yep. Then a lot of times I can't fix it for them. I can't get divorced for them. I can't do that. But
I bet some want you to.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Let me pay you for a session. I'll figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of times, what was I saying? I can't do it for you, but my inner social worker can come out of, okay, let's talk about resources. Like, let's figure this out. I'm thinking of somebody who knew they needed to get divorced. Their husband was beating them. And they didn't know what to do because they were in so much fear. It was domestic violence. And so we hooked her up with a ton of resources, support systems, education, all this stuff. And all that stuff empowered her to finally do what she needed to do.
I love what you just said, because I think what's so important about that is sometimes people don't even know what they need. So they feel stuck. So then it's like, I can't get divorced. I can't make that next move, whatever it is. It may not be divorce, because we don't know.
I don't know what I don't know.
I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So it makes it really challenging. But when somebody that can look from the outside looking in, who has resources available and expertise and can say, here, let me tell you some of these resources that are available, that would create movement, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Absolutely.
That feels empowering.
Yep. I think an underrated part of a good therapist is our ability to teach. Like a good therapist is a good teacher.
For sure.
And so when you bring that educational piece in, it does exactly what you just said. It opens up possibilities, opportunities, other options.
And when you say that, I think that is part of it, is getting unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people come to therapy because they're stuck in something. Is it
Yep.
addiction? Is it I'm stuck in a cycle of anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
Am I stuck in a marriage that's not working? Or my relationship stuck? We're getting them unstuck. That's what I'm hearing.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's almost always the case.
Yeah.
And I have told clients before that I can't keep working with them. And we get to that point, but I can't keep working with them because they so clearly want to stay stuck. And so I'm the wrong therapist for them.
For sure.
They need to find a good friend who will wallow in their victimhood with them.
So do you tell clients that?
Yeah. I mean, I'll work with them for a long time, and try every angle. But when we get so honest and so clear of like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to change. It gets to a point of they're spending money and time. They're wasting their own money and time, but also taking time from another client that's ready to get unstuck. Right. So yeah,
that seems like a hard decision as a therapist.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you feel like when that is the case, like this person doesn't really want to.
You cycle and spin with them and get nowhere over and over again. Then as the therapist, you start to become part of the problem because you're part of the system of stuckness. And at some point you have to remove yourself or else you're not helping anybody.
Do you feel like that's an enabling thing when you say that? Like you're part of that problem?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Okay.
Like I'll give you an example. Somebody doing couples therapy or individual therapy to show their spouse that they're doing therapy, but they're not actually doing anything. They're just using it to show their spouse they're doing something. And now we become enabling because we're part of the system. Do you see what I'm saying?
Totally.
So
that can actually, I would imagine as a spouse saying, okay, you're going to get therapy. Is that what we've decided on? And they're getting therapy, but nothing's changing.
Right.
That's also where you're going, okay, does therapy really work?
Right.
But it goes back to the question originally.
Their own self-determination.
Exactly. They've got to be willing and want to get help.
You're absolutely right, Lindsay.
So then what do we do? How do we find great therapists? I mean, honestly, I think that is the challenge. I hear so many people saying, one, it's really hard to find a good therapist. It's also really hard to get into a good therapist. I mean, what would you say? How would you go about doing that? If you're somebody that's interested, that feels like they're ready to get unstuck, what would that look like?
Well, I'd come to Therapy Utah.
I agree.
But I'm gonna give some secrets here for people because the best therapists are the hardest ones to get into because they're busy, their caseloads are full, they probably have wait lists. And to me, it's worth it to get in with the best therapists because look what's on the line. When you go to therapy, big stuff is on the line, your family, your mental health, all kinds of stuff. Usually the two things, be patient. And what I mean by that is, if a really good therapist has a wait list, get on the wait list and try to work your way into their caseload. Be persistent. And I know our front office might really not like me saying this,
that's right.
but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I know for me, I've told people, sorry, no, I can't, sorry, I'm busy. But when they've asked enough and they've tried enough, then I'm like, okay, like I got a space. They've asked, like they're on the front of my mind. Sure, let's try this.
This is a person that wants to change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're showing me they're motivated. They're showing me that they trust me.
You bet.
So who am I going to let in the door next? Someone like that.
You bet.
Right. And another thing too, young therapists who don't have much experience, you might think, oh, I'm not going to meet with them because it's not so much about their age or their experience. It's their ability to connect to you and their ability to push you and help you see things. So don't get caught up in, oh, they have years and years of experience, I want to go to them. Rather, notice how you feel when you go into a session with them of, are they challenging me? Are they pushing me? Do I feel heard? Do I feel seen?
Nice.
Yeah.
That's helpful. So really persistence, continue. And even if somebody is full, get on that wait list.
Yeah. Keep trying.
And don't like push away a new therapist because they're young.
Give them a chance.
Give them a chance.
You might be lucky and find an awesome therapist because they're just starting their caseload out.
Nice.
Right.
Okay. I like that. Thank you. So a couple of things we want to do here at the therapist question box is we really want to hear from our listeners. We want to hear their questions. So I have one to throw at you today. Are you ready for it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it word for word and let us know what you have. Here it is. My daughter originally started therapy to work on anxiety issues. She's really open about what she likes to talk about in therapy. And it seems like it's all over the place. It's like they're picking random topics for conversation, a new topic every week, and it feels like they're never getting anywhere. She really loves her therapist and says she feels heard in therapy. But it's been 4 months and I don't see a lot of progress or even that they're focused on the actual problem. I'm totally committed to getting her help, but I keep wondering if there's a better way.
It's interesting getting these questions without a lot of context, like what's actually going on behind the scenes, because a few things come up for me with that. One is I'm wondering whether the therapist is doing a good job or not. So I'm wondering about that. Her concern is totally legit.
What part makes you wondering about that?
Well, when it is all over the place, like what are we working on? What are we learning? So if she's coming in and it's like, hey, how was your day? Like, great. Like we're spending an hour, just shooting the bull here. Like, so her concern is legit.
Okay.
And I wonder about a couple other things. So I wonder about that mom being overbearing and controlling, and if that daughter just has a safe space to connect to another human where she doesn't feel controlled, that therapy might be awesome. And that therapist might be reading the situation and realizing the best thing for this girl's anxiety is to just shoot the bull with me. Like, let's just talk. Let's have her have a safe space to talk. So the therapist might be intentional in what they're doing by providing that safety for that adolescent. And a lot of times what an adolescent does need is they need a break from mom and dad, and they just need to talk to another adult that's healthy. But it does concern me a little bit that there's not more being done in terms of tools and just focus on the anxiety, or if that's the major issue that she's coming in with.
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing a couple of things. One of the things I hear is that sometimes the relationship is the medicine.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what an adolescent needs.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yep.
Right. What about the mom? What can, if mom feels like things are all over the place and I don't really know if we're getting anywhere, what can mom do? Can she talk to the therapist? Could she come to a session? I mean, what could she do?
So that sounds like daughter's pretty open and talking about what's going on in therapy. And so it sounds like she has a pretty decent connection to her daughter. So I would keep that going.
Okay.
And what you don't want to do is become a wedge and like you're fighting against it. So what I would do is really understand with my daughter what's going on. I would ask if I could join a session or if I could talk to the therapist, gain more understanding, ask these same questions. You don't want to undermine or get in the way of your adolescent's therapy, but you're also showing your child that you care about them and you want them to get better by advocating for them and by asking the therapist and wanting to know. If there's enough of a healthy relationship between mother and daughter, then the daughter would be like, yeah, come talk to my therapist. That's okay. That's cool. And then if you go into that therapist and they're squirming all over the place and they're like, yeah, well, I don't, and they act like they don't really know what they're doing and they're not confident, then it might be time to move on. If you go into that therapist and that therapist is like, let me explain. This is what's going on. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is the plan going forward. Then, and gives you some answers, then you need to butt out a little bit, take a break, and be grateful that you got a therapist that's doing the right thing.
Nice. That makes sense.
So,
and a job, like one of the parents' jobs is to advocate and to get curious and to do those things. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, Brannon, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate you answering the questions about therapy and giving us some clear insights as to when it's time to seek a therapist, how to find one, and some of the processes of therapy. It was really insightful and I hope beneficial to our listeners as they're maybe pursuing therapy or thinking about it.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
Yeah. Well, if you like this episode, please rate and review, share it with your friends, and thanks so much. We'll see you next time.